Hey guys, it's Teren, and today I'm here to review Big Sean's latest album called I Decided. First, let me just start by saying that Big Sean for me has always been one of those rappers with a lot of potential but never quite got there. It seemed like that his projects really lacked a narrative, and his biggest songs were the club records, and that seemed to be what he was good at. Big Sean has always been one of those rappers with a lot of potential, from his finally famous mixtape to his latest album before this, Dark Skies Paradise. But his potential has never really been met because always seemed to go back to the same theme. The club songs with the weird and funky lyrics. It's been hard to get behind him as an artist for me, and it's been frustrating because I, as a fan of music and as an avid listener of rap, knew from his lyrical ability that he could be one of the best. And with that, I wasn't really anticipating much from this album because I was anticipating Dark Sky Paradise when it came out a lot, and I had very high expectations for it. And even though it was good, I think I gave it a 7 out of 10. It wasn't really what I was looking for Sean to make that leap into one of the better rappers today, and it was kind of frustrating. I was planning on reviewing Drake's More Life project when it did come out for the per, but I was gonna listen to this regardless because it's a high profile release, it's a high profile artist. So I stayed up on the night it came out and I listened to the whole thing, first song to the very last in order, and I was very pleasantly surprised by what I heard and what I got. Everything about this album is what Big Sean needed for me to make that push into top 5 artists, into top 5 rappers. And for the album itself, no track on this album is unlistenable or bad or even just mediocre. Every song is good to outstanding, which was surprising because even though Dark Sky Paradise had a couple good tracks on it, there was a lot of tracks on there that for me were throwaway tracks. I mean, his two biggest songs off that album were I Don't F With You and Blessings, and I feel like people listen to Blessings more for Drake's part in it than Big Sean's. But for this, I mean, he finally made that leap for me into top 5 rappers, and I was like I said before, I was very pleasantly surprised. The album itself, I mean, in a year where projects from Jay-Z, Eminem, Nicki Minaj, Kanye, Pusha T, Future, all those artists have projects supposedly coming out, and so I wasn't expecting this to be top 5, but I can't foresee anything that keeps this out of my top 5 projects for the year at the end of 2017. The narrative is basically an older version of Sean going back and trying to give advice to his younger self, and by the end of the album, it really feels like that this album is a new start for Sean, that he's finally made that push into rapping elite, and he's finally taken a more serious tone for himself, for his music, for his life, and it's just a great story to get behind. It's a great narrative to follow throughout the album, and it's very interesting to see how Big Sean follows that up with whatever project or songs he has next. The biggest songs, the best songs from it, Hanging Off the Balcony, Inspire Me, No Favors, Sacrifices, Bounce Back. All those songs were the highest points on the track, and especially No Favors. I mean, Eminem's feature on that was just amazing. I mean, it legitimately felt like old Eminem on that track and on that feature from his politically incorrect versus Eminem's very very heavy and very opinionated stance on political figures right now. Just amazing. Just everything that people reminisce about and miss about the old Eminem is on that feature, and I just thought it was amazing. Migos is feature on Sacrifices. When I saw Migos was on there, I was kind of hesitant to listen to the track. I was kind of wary of it because where Dark Sky Paradise lost it for me is it felt like that album was going somewhere, and then I Don't F With You came on, and it just threw the whole album out the window for me, or not the whole album, but it kind of ruined the feel I was getting from it because it was another club song. It was another, Big Sean throwing his ego at us, throwing the club records at us, and when I saw Migos on there, I mean, obviously, Raindrop, Drop Top. We know what Migos are as a group at this point, and I just felt like that was going to be another thing with this album, another ego parading fest, and I was very pleasantly surprised and very glad that it was not that. I mean, definitely this is a track that probably would play in the club, or at least Migos feature on it, but it served the narrative fine. It served the purpose of the album and the story behind it great, or at least good enough, and that was the one thing listening through the album I thought was going to bring it down, but it didn't. As for the production, I mean, it was great. Kind of goes back and forth. I mean, he's always been an artist with a multitude of productions that he can flow on, that he can rap on. Plenty of the tracks on the album have dark tones, very serious tones, and you could tell that Sean is really serious. And you can tell by his lyrics that Sean's very serious on those. You can tell from the story behind the album that he is legitimately meaning the lyrics and the words that he's saying. Normally, as I said before, I mean, he's very, very, very outspoken about his money and his girls. But to take a serious, dark tone and to really, really kind of pour your heart out on a dark track, on a dark-toned, great production value, very pleasant to hear. What's more impressive is that Sean raps on those songs, the ones with the dark production value, the ones with the dark sounds and the great production value so well. He goes from that to rapping on very soulful, almost gospel-like songs. That's very impressive, to go from such a dark tone to such a soulful tone and do it just as well without missing a beat is another very pleasant surprise on the album, and something that I was very glad and very happy about. Now, I keep talking about the strengths of the album, how pleasantly surprising they were, and how happy I was to listen to it. But there are a couple, albeit slight, cons to the album. One is the order of the track list itself. I mean, it starts with Light featuring Jeremiah, and it's one of those soulful tracks I was talking about. Very, very just almost gospel-like, very soulful, very, very heartfelt, and it's immediately followed by Bounce Back that actually served the purpose of the album and actually helped move it along. But it's a track that's one of the dark tones, one of the more bleak sounding songs on the track, and it's kind of, I guess, disjointing. I was kind of taken aback a little bit from it because you have this, heartfelt, gospel-like track with vocals from Jeremiah, who's always, a very soulful singer, and you're immediately followed by a dark tone song in Bounce Back. And for me, going through the track list, I would put, after Light, I would have followed that with either Sunday Morning Jetpack or Bigger Than Me or Same Time Part 1. Like, those are the three other tracks that kind of have a similar feel to Light, and I would lead with that, and kind of that way it would feel more congruent, and it could lead into the darker sounding songs in a way that didn't feel so disjointing. And another con, which isn't a con for me, but it might be for another listener, are the skits before and after the tracks that kind of serve as a narrative to the story. I enjoyed it personally because, like I said, a story and a heartfelt narrative in his projects is something that Big Sean was missing for me. But for people who don't care about the narrative of the albums and who are just there to listen to the music by itself, it might be a little bit annoying and it might be a little bit weird, and they might just find themselves skipping right over it into the next song. Which is fine. Again, that's more of a con for them than it is for me. Overall, I feel like that really covers it. Big Sean finally made that jump that I've been wanting him to make for so long. For me, he's in my top 5 for sure, and if he's not in my top 5, he's right outside of it. Before this album, Big Sean was barely top 10 for me, and I mean barely top 10, like 9, 10. If another project came out, he might even get pushed to 11th. He's pretty much solidified himself as one of the rapping elite right now with this album. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. There was not one song that gave me a bad experience or a lesser experience than any other of the tracks on this album. No favors. The Eminem feature was expertly used. Great. There was not a wasted feature on this album. I mean, 2088's on Same Time, the Flint Chosen Choir and Stara on Bigger Than Me, Jeremiah on Light. I mean, they were all used to perfection. None of them went to waste. Every track on here is something that you can just listen to in your car driving or sitting down on your bed listening to with some headphones on. And I got something that by the end of the year I think might be, I can't see being less than the top 5 project. For me, Big Sean finally solidifies his spot amongst the rapping elite today. I Decided, which comes in at a 9 out of 10. Thank you.